For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love.
And what are some of the things that you've really run out of time? And we've got to talk about your latest. I want to go back a little bit, first of all, and celebrate a true legend.
Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work.
And did you pursue performing opportunities while you were in high school?
Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
And Kassira McKee. How are you, Kassira?
Hi.
I'm bringing you in for a big close-up. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. We are on a Saturday night and talk about change. We're normally on a Sunday night, and tonight is all about change, the evolution of change. I found this wonderful quote today that I'm going to start tonight with. And the quote is from James Baldwin, who is one of my favorite writers. And he says, most of us are about as eager to be changed as we are to be born and go through our changes in a similar state of shock. And I told you before the show started, I dealt with a major change today, which was difficult, but you applauded when I told you about this change, because you felt that it was a change that needed to happen.
Well, and you took your action as best you could. And fortunately, the problem went away on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Isn't that a beautiful thing?
That is a beautiful thing.
The universe heard you, and I always say, when we're sincere and honest with the universe and we take the appropriate action, and we just have to step back and let the universe do its job.
Now, you and I, well, I'm not going to give away too much, but you've been dealing with a lot of change this week.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Yes. How are you right now, emotionally, with everything?
I chant. I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism for 33 years, and I did I chanted before, I always chant before you and I do a show. So I'm calm and I'm centered.
Great. And this is under the umbrella of Richard Skipper Celebrates. So I want to start there. What are you celebrating tonight?
My life in general, being gifted with a gifted life. And also, I've had a lot of support from people who have been very supportive. My dear friends have been supportive. My friend Doug McAllister, who's on right now. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Dougie. My Dougie Wuggy. Doug has been very supportive. My friend Aaron's been supportive. My friend Sandra Kay has been supportive. She just called me a while ago to check up on me. I'm going through some legal stuff right now. That's all I'm going to say. And the person that I'm dealing with is,
well, we can compare
not cooperating. So,
I will tell you from someone who I spent 7 years in litigation. And for those of you out there who have never been through litigation or through legal situations, it ain't what you see in the movies and television. Yeah. It's not cut and dry like we think it is. And every moment on the moment, talk about change. It's all about change. The wind changes and everything changes in a heartbeat. But so with everything that you're dealing with that, what have you given up this week?
Wow. I can't really think of anything. I mean, I dealt with everything the best way I could. I've handled it the best way I could, and I don't really think I've had to really been called to let go of anything this week. I know that sounds quite strange because I do it a lot, but I don't think I've had to let go of anything this week in particular. I'm just going with the flow and just taking the action as best I know how.
Now, are you continuing to go with the flow?
Mm-hmm.
So if I give you a surprise question tonight, you can
don't give me those surprise questions. hate the surprise question.
The surprise question.
I don't hate them. Hate's a strong word.
What was that?
Hate's a strong word. Well, you've already popped some questions on me already.
So can I go with the surprise question tonight?
All right.
Okay. I love
You
the
have
surprise.
to.
I love the surprise question. And the surprise question tonight. Well, this is an easy one. What was your first car?
Oh, God. Okay, so Teresa, our guest Teresa, we're the same age. And back in our day, well, we're the same age, Richard.
Yes.
So back in our day, in high school, I went to a high school in a swanky part of town. It was it was a nice part of town in North Dallas. That and a lot of the kids came from money families. I did not come from a money family, a rich family. So all the kids had Camaros, Monte Carlos, and Regals. Those were the cars. I don't know if you remember that, but those were the cars to have.
Yes.
Oh my God, I had the most embarrassing car. I had a 1966 Ford Fairlane that my grandfather bought me for like $1, and he had it painted, and it literally looked like they spray painted the car gray. It no shine, nothing, no shine. And he did have a little radio put in it. At least it was a radio, That was my first car, and so everybody is driving these shiny new cars, and I'm driving a gray Ford Fairlane. But at least I had wheels. And it was Texas, and I had no air conditioning in the car.
Wow! But you had freedom.
Freedom. Oh yeah, I could escape.
Well, the word for tonight is collaboration. And you and I are all about collaboration. I love collaborating with you.
I do too. I love you.
Yeah. And so I'm letting everyone know that the word tonight is collaboration. And I say here that I have a new Richard Skipper mug, but we're also going to give away a copy of your book.
Yay! The mug.
So yes, so they'll get a mug and this. But let's talk also about your wonderful friend, who hopefully by the end of the evening, she will consider me a friend as well. Tell us about Teresa. And you reached out and said that you would love to have her come on the show tonight to talk about the evolution of image before we bring her on.
I've known Teresa since we were in our early 20s. We performed together in a god-awful dinner theater. And she's shaking her head. I see her shaking her head. It was god-awful.
Well, I'll bring her on so that everybody can see the reaction.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. This place was so bad, yet we made a lot of friends. I'm still friends with people that I was in this dinner theater with. And actually, one of the people Mark Pennington, we performed at the dinner theater, he and I got cast in Dolly with Carol together during the dinner theater moment. And that's where I met Teresa. We lost contact over the years, and that's the beautiful thing about Facebook, is that I've been able to contact people I knew years ago. And she posted a picture of herself not long ago as a memory of when she was ill and she had no hair on her head. And I thought, and something said, "You've got to talk to her." And we called each other. I don't remember who called who, but we called each other and had this wonderful conversation. And in the conversation, she said, during this time, it was a huge time of change, and I had to let this go and that go. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you've got to be on the show." Teresa is a wonderful singer and dancer, wonderful performer. And that's why she's here.
Well, hello, Teresa. First of all, welcome to the show. Thrilled you're here. Before we talk about your bout with cancer, let's talk about the career that you were having prior to that, and where you were in your life. Are you originally from Texas as well?
Yes, I am originally from Waco, Texas.
Ah, okay. And so let's talk about your. I always like it when I do a lot of interviews. I always like to go back to the 5-year-old self, because the 5-year-old self to me is the purest self. It's before life starts adding pressure to you as to who you should be and who you should not be. And teachers start telling you who you should be or not be. Tell us about a little bit about the 5-year-old Teresa.
I was a very shy child. I was hypersensitive, and I'm an only child. So I spent a great deal of time alone in my room with fantasy, and I was sick quite often from when I was very young. I had pneumonia twice before I was 3. I nearly died once.
Wow.
Every year I went through bouts of illness that kept me out of school for long periods of time. So I spent a great deal of time by myself, entertaining myself, creating with my dolls, my trolls. I had a little stereo and I loved musicals. And so my parents would always take me to movies. One of the first movies I saw was The Music Man. And if you remember years ago when they had the gold or the velvet curtain that would shut at intermission,
Yes.
and you'd have programs to these movies, and it was open. It was a grand event at those times. And I would have records for My Fair Lady, and I had records for The Music Man and Guys and Dolls, and just a whole host of things that I would stand in front of the stereo and I would just sing my little heart out. And so, being a very shy kid, I had a dad who I think he probably had a very difficult time as a child himself, but he picked on me and he teased me all the time. And one night, I was singing along with the radio, and he came to the breakfast table and the next day and said, "I heard Bug." He called me Bug. "I heard Bug singing, and she was a little off key." And
Oh,
I was so humiliated. I was so mortified that not only had I been caught performing, but that I was bad.
Mm.
That incident resonated through the rest of my life. It affected my professional career. And it wasn't until I became a psychologist that I was actually able to put 2 and 2 together to figure out how that created a false reality for me.
Wow. What was the breakthrough point for you where you were able to finally get through that door of accepting the fact that you knew that your father had said this, but it affected your life. But what was the turning point for you?
Well, when I was living in LA, my stage fright, uh, basically, that came out of this event had become so intense that I could no longer sing for auditions. So I made a choice just to
Mm.
walk away. And I'll never forget, there was a very famous person I was singing for at the time, and he looked at me like, "Why are you wasting my time?" He basically curled lip and just disdain. It was so painful. I said, "I'm not going to do this anymore." But I never gave up loving it. And so when I decided to become a psychologist, I had always known that that event had happened. But when I began studying anxiety, I had a great history of anxiety. My mother had anxiety. So when I began studying it, and we started talking about something called social anxiety is highly connected to performance anxiety, or the inability like to go to parties because you
mhm.
fear people are going to say bad things about you. When I began studying that, it was like a light bulb went on in my life, and I went, "Oh my Lord,
Wow.
that's what that was about." And it was a freeing moment. I can't even describe how the burden was lifted off of me when I realized that this was not my fault. It was not a personal failing. I was not bad. I was carrying around a message for a very long time that people were viciously criticizing me when I was making myself vulnerable and putting it out there. And when
Mhm.
I let that go, I began to be able to sing again. Now, I was much older, and certain periods of time had passed where I was not going to be the ingenue or the love interest anymore in a lot of musicals. I was singing for myself now. And
Hmm.
it brought joy back into my life, and it brought a sense of identity back into my life that began when I was that 5-year-old kid standing in front of a stereo singing with Julie Andrews. I've got confidence and sunshine, you know. I mean, it all came together, and to this day, do I get nervous sometimes? Of course, I get nervous sometimes, but I have released the idea that what anybody may be saying about me out there has any anchor in reality.
Wow, that's great.
Does that ring a bell, Richard?
Major bills. Did you ever confront your father on what he had said to you?
No, my father died in 1989, and
Wow.
um, he had been a very heavy smoker. He died of nasopharyngeal cancer, and it was a very difficult death. I was his caregiver, and I had
Wow.
a lot of anger. My anger about what he had done to me, but also the decisions that he had made that affected my mother and me and finances and all those kinds of things. That I was with him until the end, but afterwards I had a friend say to me, "You are very angry. You need to talk to somebody." And she caught me on the right day, and I went, "Okay, can you recommend somebody to me?" And she recommended her therapist to me in Los Angeles. And I began seeing this woman, and I saw her for probably 5 or 6 years. And it was a godsend. There are times you go through therapy that you're resistant. There are times you go through therapy where you make big
Mhm.
changes.
Mhm.
But because I had decided to confront what I was dealing with in the sort of the incongruence of what a father is supposed to be and what had happened to me, I had to deal with that. And so I not only worked with a therapist, I worked with an energy worker. I explored Rolfing. I let a lot go that I was holding in my body, and thank God I did, because when I was finally diagnosed with cancer, I was prepared to meet that challenge.
Oh,
Well, God bless you. I mean, first of all, I'm the oldest of four,
mhm.
and my father also is a heavy smoker. Uh, this week coming up will be 20 years since my father passed away at the age of 67. Uh, and my father growing up always said to me that I was a big zero and that I would never have any success. Um, but for me, I always said that it was a blessing because I left home when I was 18 years old. And I always said that if my father had been a nurturing father, I would have gone home within the first 3 weeks of being in New York because I was so alone. I was so afraid. I was so nervous that no matter how bad things got, I was not going to go back. So I kept forging ahead. But I did confront my father years later when I was 31 and had a conversation with him. He was in total denial that I
Mhm.
had imagined it all, that
Mhm.
it was all in my mind. So that's why I asked if you had ever had this. Um, when I want to ask about the cancer, and when you first discovered that you had the cancer, and what the psychological impact was to get that kind of news and how that truly changed your whole life and the way that your outlook on life.
So I was 39 when I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer.
Mm,
And there were two very large tumors, both about the size of a lemon. and they had gotten so large, they were a centimeter from my chest wall. The tumors were about 7.5 centimeters each. They had been growing inside of me for quite some time. They were very, very slow growing. I had had mammograms that didn't find them. I had had exams that didn't find them. But about 6 months before I was diagnosed, I became very, very clinically depressed.
Mm.
And my therapist was very worried about me and was wanting me to go on antidepressants. And I'm sort of a medication resistant person to begin with. And so I resisted and resisted until finally one day I was sitting in her office just weeping uncontrollably. She was truly concerned about me. And
Teresa,
so I had a
excuse me for
choice.
interrupting, but do you know what was bringing on the depression?
Yes, I do. It's when you have a very advanced stage cancer, it affects the
Yep.
pH balance in your body, and that can be anything from your ability to respond to anesthesia or topical anesthesia, or it could affect you in your immune function. And your immune function has a lot to do with your mood.
Okay.
And so that's really, I was coming to this point with this disease where it was about to get worse. And my body was speaking to me, speaking very clearly to me. And of course, when you're in show business, you have your ups, the downs, you get a lot of rejection. So sometimes you can confuse the depression with just not doing very well at that time in your career. But I knew that this felt like a disease. This didn't just feel situational, it felt like a disease. So rather than go to a psychiatrist, I made a decision to go to a radiologist to have mammogram and ultrasound. And so I was referred to this wonderful doctor in Beverly Hills. And when they did the ultrasound, they found these large masses and they said, you're going to need a biopsy. So they did a biopsy immediately and they couldn't get me anesthetized. So I was getting a biopsy with a large bore needle going straight into my breast to pull out the fluid. It was incredibly painful, but the doctor pulled out dark fluid. And when he did, I saw his face and I knew there was something gravely wrong here. And he put his arm around me, which is never a good sign. And he said, I'll call you on Tuesday and we'll talk about this. So I had to spend the weekend, really just sort of getting mentally adjusted to the fact that there's probably some bad news coming. And this is back in the time when we didn't really have cell phones readily. We had pagers, we had answering machines. I had an intuition that I needed to call my answering machine at 8:30. I was doing office temp work at UCLA, and I got to call my answering machine, and there was a message that said, call me now. So I called the doctor. They got on the phone immediately, and he said, I'm sorry, it's cancer in both places. And I went, what do I do? And he said, well, you need to see a surgeon. And I said, well, I don't have a surgeon. He said, well, let me set you up. So he set me up with basically the surgeon to the stars in Beverly Hills. I couldn't have made this happen if I tried, but I walked in and there's all these major stars pictures on the walls. He brings me in, he puts my films up on the wall, and he said, I'm sorry, you're going to have a mastectomy. And I went, oh, whoa. And I said, can't you salvage the breast? He said, no, it's right under the nipple. You can't have it. And I said, okay. He said, so we're going to do a surgery 2 days from now. And I went, no, I have to get my mother here.
Whoa.
So 10 days later, I had gotten a second opinion who basically concurred. 10 days later, I underwent a mastectomy on February 19th, the day I spoke to you, on February 19th. And they were able to get clean margins. They got the whole thing. I was cancer-free on February 19th.
Wow.
But because I was young and because it was so incredibly large, they treated me aggressively. And so I had, after I recovered from the surgery, I had 2 different kinds of chemotherapy. I had adriamycin cytoxin, which is known as the Red Devil. It's very, very severe. And then I was switched over to Taxol, and they have different kinds of side effects. And then I took a month off, and then I did 28 treatments of radiation. And then I took some time off, and I did 5 years of an adjuvant drug called Evista. And then I was declared cancer-free. But I call cancer the gift that keeps on giving, that there were certain physical problems that would persist after the disease. So you were always waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for somebody to tell you, oh my God, it's back. But I managed to make it to 10 years. I made it to 15. And last Saturday, it was 24 years.
Wow.
Wow.
So I guess-
Congratulations.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you still have that feeling that it's still knocking on your back? It's there as a shadow over you that it's going to come back. I mean, is that fear always there, or do you feel that you've been able to, as Kassira says in her book, let that go?
Well, it's changed. You know, once you've really had to think about dying, you never really take life for granted again. And so, because every day is a gift and every day is precious, I have taken more care about my personal happiness and satisfaction than I did before. And so, you know, my dad died at 62 years old. My mom died at 85. Somewhere in between may lie my destiny. I don't know. I do know that I had no idea that I had cancer for a very, very long time. And then in a New York minute, my life changed. So I realized that any minute I could get any kind of diagnosis, whether it's cancer or whether it's heart disease, that will change my life. I do not live in fear. I do not live with a health anxiety that I'm going to any minute go downhill, but I am prepared sort of existentially to accept whatever the next point is in my life, because frankly, we are all on a road one way. And some of us get there sooner and some of us get there in a longer distance. And so it's important to have the quality of life. If you don't have the quantity, it's important to have the quality.
Absolutely. God bless you. Do you think of this as a gift?
I do. I absolutely do. You know, it's not something that I want to do again, but that day that I got that call that said, I'm sorry, it's cancer in both places. After I hung up with the doctor, I was at my little cubicle at UCLA, and I said, I got to get out of here. I gotta go be myself for a second. So I went and sat in the bathroom for a second, and I got to change my life, because I had been living for show business. Acting was who I was. It wasn't just something I did, it was who I was. And I was waiting for too many people to give me permission to work, or too many people to give me permission to be happy. And I felt that I needed to begin to think about giving back to this world, that if I was going to live 5 years, 10 years, what was my legacy going to be? And cancer gave me that gift. It gave me the impetus to leap. And so after I finished that year of treatment, I actually worked for years and years. I worked part-time for Crate and Barrel. It was one of my little part-time jobs, and it was a family, and they were some of the most supportive people I've ever seen in my life. They threw parties for me, they raised money for me, but they hired me in a full-time job. And I knew it didn't feel right. I knew I didn't want it, but it kind of floated me until I had a plan. And in spring of 2000, I went to an audition for a Mounds candy bar. And I walked in the room, and there was a sign-in sheet, and there was the name of a woman who had a very large role in E.T. There was another woman who had had a very large role in Dynasty, and I went, my God, if they're here, what's out there for me? And so I went home that day, and I got online. It's when we first, had computers and internet. And I got online and I started looking for psychology programs. I knew that psychology and acting had a great deal to do with each other. They're both about why do people do what they do.
That's right.
So I had my BFA from Baylor. And I saw that Baylor had one of the top PsyD programs in the country. And I said, oh, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back and get my doctorate in psychology, and that's going to be my new career. So I packed everything up. By May of 2000, I moved back to Waco. I moved in with my mother. I got a job at Dillard's selling shoes, and I went back to school. I did 2 years of post-baccalaureate work, and then I was accepted into the Baylor doctoral program, to get a doctorate in psychology. I did 3 years of intensive work. I did 1 year at the Central Texas VA for internship. I did 1 year at the Memphis VA in postdoctoral fellowship, and I became a doctor. And it would not have happened if it weren't for cancer.
Wow.
Wow.
I have to ask you, what was your mom's response when you said, Mom, I'm coming home?
Oh, she's happy. She was happy. My mom's another story, but she, when she lost my dad, even though that they had problems, she was not really fit to be by herself. She didn't know how to pay bills. She didn't know how to do a lot of things. So having me around the house was very helpful for her.
That's
I'm sure.
Yeah.
What an incredible story. I want to ask, what was the biggest change that took place for you? You're talking about all of the manifestations that you changed in terms of the physicality of changing your life, but within the inner changes that you made, I also, it's almost as if I feel that I have this inner gift of knowing how fragile our lives are, and knowing that every day is a gift. I have lost some very dear friends.
You've had a lot, Richard. You've had a lot of
loss. And I'm the executor of a friend that I lost in December, and dealing with her life. And I want to share a story with you. I had a friend many, many years ago, and he was taking care of an artist. And his entire apartment, this artist friend that he was taking care of, was like a shrine to his art. And he wanted me to see the work that he was doing. And this guy had a massive heart attack and went like that. And when he passed away, he said, I want you to come and see his apartment. So when I walked into the apartment, and I was at the time probably 23, 24, I walked into the apartment, and this was many, many years ago. There was a can of cat food that was still in the electric can opener. Was still in the electric can opener. There were newspapers that were on the sofa, bills that were on the coffee table. There was water in the bathtub where he was prepared to take it. And to me, I said, it's like life had just stopped. And it was like a wake-up call for me at that very moment. And for all of us, it's like life stopped. And I was thinking, I go for a walk every morning. And I just had, like, I was walking yesterday morning, and I was thinking, because it was a pedestrian who was hit by a car just a few days ago. And I'm not a morbid person. I'm a very optimistic person, as Kassira will attest to. But I was thinking, all it takes is for a drunk driver or someone who's looking at their cell phone and not paying attention to not being paying attention, and then it's gone.
Yes.
And so I can honestly say that if, God forbid, I was to check out, I feel that I have lived a full life. But for you, what was that, with everything that's happened, what changed on the inner self that really changed in terms of the way you now approach your life?
I wish I could say it was an aha moment, but it was a process.
Yeah.
I really cannot recommend therapy more highly.
Hmm.
In Los Angeles, so many people have a therapist, whether it's for true insight-oriented work or it's just, stroking their ego, they have a therapist. And
Mhm.
I had a person who I had more than one person, but I had a person who forced me to face dysfunctional beliefs and dysfunctional behaviors. And at first, there was a great resistance to change, right?
Mhm.
Change is difficult. And then she referred me over to a colleague of hers who was doing energy work. And this woman did not have the softest bedside manner, but she would confront me on when I was taking an easy way out, or I was deferring, or just wasn't dealing with something. But it was aligning the energies, and I know that some people believe this and some people don't. But for me, it was transformative.
Yeah.
I
That's what we
had
talked about.
Yeah, I had times where I could feel a great breakthrough. And there were other times I felt nothing was happening. But even when I felt nothing was happening, there is a subconscious process going on, which is internalizing and filing and dealing with the information that you are personally changing about who you are in this world.
Mm.
Because I think, one of the dangers of being in show business is that you are a type, you are a product, you are not a person. And so you are constantly trying to be something else.
Mm.
Should I dye my hair? Kassira knows me. I've been through blonde hair. I've been through red hair.
She and I have been every color.
Right.
She and I both have been every brunette, red, different shades of blonde. Yeah.
I've had people tell me that I needed a nose job. I needed a boob job.
At one time, you looked like Marilyn Monroe. You
Yeah.
had that blonde hair, and your makeup was just perfect. And yeah.
So that was a type I was trying to be. And so there was no identity. There was no person there. It was, who am I? Somebody please tell me who I am. And what I had to learn through all of these explorations of traditional therapy and complementary therapy was, what are my values? What is it that I stand for? What is it that I believe in this world? That is the fabric of my character. And so I had to go back and touch with, who am I and what is my character? And when you know yourself and when you accept yourself, then you refuse to accept people treating you as an object, as less. And you have permission to let things go and to move on and to trust that this is not the only reality, that there is a positive reality somewhere out there for you if you'll just go out there and try it.
Yeah.
And so it really was, if my friend had not told me, boy, you sure are angry, you need help, I don't know where I'd be today. Not even sure I would be alive, because my mindset going into cancer would have been fearful and negative and pessimistic. And on the opposite, I was hopeful, and I looked and saw the positive. And by God, I was blessed with some of the best doctors in Los Angeles. In fact, my oncologist is a person that appeared on Oprah with Christina Applegate. I mean,
Wow. Yes.
here's a funny thing. If you love Sex in the City and you remember when Samantha was diagnosed with breast cancer, she was trying to get in with a Dr. McAndrew.
Yes.
Dr. McAndrew is my doctor.
I own that whole series, by the way, Teresa.
She's so popular that she gave a patient permission to use her name in that show.
Wow.
That's how fortunate and blessed I was. And I believe that when you are on the right track, that you will find the helpers.
Well,
Teresa, I'd like to backtrack. I'd like to read something from my book and then backtrack a little bit from the beginning before the cancer. In my book, Let That Go. On page 153, I have a section of the book where I talk about why people hold on to people, places, and all kinds of things. This chapter is called Illness, Injury, and Disease. And I write my own, what I've discovered to be my truth about each subject. And here's what I write. And I learned this from Louise Hay, actually. And at the end of the show, I'm going to read the quote at the top of the chapter from Louise Hay. Here's what I write. Physical illnesses and diseases are rooted in our thought patterns and beliefs. Thoughts are connected to different parts of our body and physical problems. Our inner mentality is the cause, the symptom is the effect. What was there sort of, what was going on inside of you that you think might have had it manifest as cancer?
You know, when they were able to remove the tumors and they told me how long they had been in my body, I looked back over 10 years time, and I was working in a cruise ship in a show that, my God, was so horrible that, first of all, I could not believe I was in such.
Was it as bad as Grand Crystal Palace?
It was worse.
Oh God, I can't even imagine it. Okay.
Well, you know, Grand Crystal Palace had wonderful performers.
Yes.
It's just other circumstances about that.
I'm going to say something to both of you. Excuse me for interrupting here, because in this business, isn't it amazing how we allow ourselves to be put into these positions simply for the sake of that opportunity to be in a spotlight? Over and over and over again. And we allow ourselves to be degraded over and over and over again. So, but you talk about these bad situations, and every person, and you look at the biggest names in show business. I mean, if you've watched Being the Ricardos, Lucille Ball at the top of her career, fighting for what she wanted in this business and still having to prove herself. And I was talking to someone the other day who said, after 40 years in this business, going to Law and Order and fighting for the right of doing a 2-line part on the show. And Teresa, you mentioned going for a Mounds commercial, and you mentioned the actress. I'm thinking that it's my friend from E.T., who's a dear friend of mine, and I think that you both were up for the same role. And she talks about this, after a lifetime in this business, going up for a walk-on,
right?
And having to prove yourself.
So I agree with you. We've been through it. We've all been through it. We all allowed it, I should say. So getting back to the horrible cruise ship, Teresa.
So I was in this show that I was older than the rest of the kids in the show. I was a union member. I was being dressed in costumes that were just atrocious. And I had to go out there and perform. And we kept losing cast members. So all we did was rehearse. It was absolutely miserable. And I needed, I had received this promise from the production company that I would have a room on the deck. I would have days off, and none of it was true. They lied to me the whole way. And so we were in this tiny room over the bow thrusters at the back of the ship. So every morning when we went sideways into port, everything shook off your shelves and went flying across the room. And You know,
Oh
you
my
fell out of
God.
bed sometimes. And so I said, God,
Oh gosh.
Jim, I'm going to get some shelves in our room.
Oh my God.
So I walked up to the first officer, who was a Norwegian guy, and introduced myself and kind of batted his eyelashes and got some shelves for the room. But I ended up making a relationship with this guy. And he basically saved me on the ship. But when we got off the ship, he came to Texas to visit me and my parents, and then he abruptly dropped me before he got on a plane to leave and told me he had never loved me.
Oh
And
God.
yeah, and that was 10 years before this cancer, and it so hurt me. And I was living in my parents' house. My dad was getting cancer. My mom was asking me every day, when are you moving out? Screen Actors Guild went on a 6-month strike. So I really couldn't move at the time. And so I was trapped in this miserable situation. And I had a history of boyfriends that treated me very, very badly. And instead of saying, hey, this isn't really working for me, let's just break up and be friends, I would try to hang in there, because if you don't believe you're good enough, if you're only doing better, they will love you. I had a boyfriend that I was doing the weather on television. I was a weekend weather girl, KWTX TV in Texas. And every weekend night I was doing the weather, and he would go, oh, I didn't watch. I didn't bother to watch. I mean, he was so dreadful. And what that does to you, if you have good self-esteem, you rise up and say, this doesn't work for me. God, vaya con Dios. But I didn't. I hung in there, and I let it beat me down and break me down and make me not have any sort of sense of self-worth, which of course spilled on to relationship to relationship to relationship. And right before I was diagnosed with cancer, I went through a relationship with a man who I am friends with now, but he couldn't decide whether he was going to break up with his old girlfriend or he was going to go with me. And so by the time I was diagnosed with cancer, I was a bloody mess. And so I see it as a trajectory over time of where my personal sense of worth and my personal sense of esteem just kept taking hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. And you know, I worked in casting some in Los Angeles. I worked as a reader in ABC Daytime. And I read with everybody who was up for a role in soap operas. And I would see people come in, and they were known stars, basically begging for a role on a soap. And I just began to feel like I was in quicksand. I was beginning to sink, and I couldn't save myself. It was a powerless feeling. And I think really that is what contributed to immune function breakdown.
Okay.
You know, there is scientific evidence that links mind-body connection. There is no doubt that there is a reality that, and stress is known to be an enormous contributor, because we release cortisol and we release adrenaline, and those are very corrosive chemicals which are made to help us in fight or flight situations. If you stay in fight or flight all the time, then you are manufacturing chemicals in your body which are basically overtaking your immune system. And so I feel like that because of the stress and the distress, that I just set myself up. Not that I'm guilty of causing anything, but I set myself up to have a physical breakdown, and whatever idiopathic problem that introduced itself into my life that caused a genetic mutation, that caused my immune system to not recognize that there was malignancies there. I can't actually put my exact finger on it, but I can tell you the situation that probably set it up.
Wow. I want to ask.
I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
So I talk a lot about thoughts and feelings, thoughts and feelings, thoughts and feelings, thoughts and feelings. On page 89 in my book, in the thoughts and feelings, why we hold on to thoughts and feelings, and you probably already know this, Teresa, but I want to read it out loud for people as well. There used to be 6 feelings recognized by the psychological world, and now there's 8. They've added 2. And only one of them is considered positive. And I want to read them all because I'd like to know if you can pinpoint the feelings that you were having during this long process leading up to the manifestation of cancer. Here's the feelings: anger, fear, sadness, disappointment, disgust, humiliation, surprise, and joy.
Fear places a big part in that. Anxiety is an emotion which is very connected to a sense of danger and a fear of something bad about to come down the pike.
Right.
And my mom was what is called a catastrophizer. Things are not just bad, they're horrible. And she would immediately leap to a conclusion that something was catastrophic. And so when I first began therapy, one of the things I said to my therapist was I feared I was going to end up living in a box under a bridge. And my therapist said, Teresa, you are a very gifted person. You will never live in a box under a bridge. You will find some way to make a living. So I had left in my mind, there was no in between. It was either going to be great or it was going to be a catastrophe. And catastrophizing is something that we often speak about in treating patients with chronic pain, that I actually assess people for catastrophizing. How are they viewing their situation? And if they view their situation as dire, tragic, catastrophic, they are living in fight or flight. And so because you so need to be accepted in the film and television community, because you so need to make a living at something other than being a secretary, you are constantly in a state of fear that you will not get the job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
But there's
I would do that in New York. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other layer that we in this business put on top of that is this idea of how others are perceiving us. If we go into this profession, that we are seen as less than by the people around us because we are not measuring up. I am seen by many people in New York as a success. They see me as a success. But my family in South Carolina, because they don't see me on television and they don't see me in movies and they don't see me on that level, I am considered a failure. And that's their perception. And I let go of that a long time ago. So because I can't live up to that. And
I used to, for years, I had friends, and some of them will watch this. People, I don't understand why you're a star. You're not a star. Why aren't you a star? Why aren't you a recording star? Why aren't you a pop star? Why haven't you won a Grammy? Why haven't you won an American Music Award? Because nobody's. I've fought for record deals and they wouldn't give me. Nobody would give me a record deal. Now you don't necessarily have to have one. Right. But back in the day, you did.
Right.
And it was a lot of pressure. And I felt every time somebody asked me that question, I felt bad about myself.
Exactly.
This is before my own evolution, and my own human revolution. And here's the thing. I never wanted to be famous. Never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to sing and make a really amazing living at it. I wanted it for the money. And I've told everybody, if there's one day that everybody says, we hate your voice, don't sing for us anymore, I'll go, okay, and I won't. I did a show in Sedona in October, at a theater in Sedona in October. And that was it. You know, I don't go out and audition for things anymore because they won't pay me enough. The theater does not, small theater does not pay well anymore like it used
If
to.
you get paid at all.
Yeah, some people don't get paid at all. They do it for the fun of it. Not fun for me. I did it for the money, really. I did some really great shows in Dallas at Theater 3. And of course, Hello Dolly with Carol was an amazing experience. But it really wasn't, you know, as Teresa knows, there were a lot of us that did musical theater, yet we were also pop singers. And that's really what I wanted to do. And I ended up being an R&B and blues singer for years, you know, I got sick of theater. But the pressure other people put on us to be who they want us to be and what they expect is extraordinary. And people have got to quit talking to people like that. They've got to let go of that, those preconceived notions and those expectations without permission. They don't have permission to have that expectation.
Absolutely.
And they know, here's what I think they know. I think some people know that it's hurtful.
Oh, of course they know it's hurtful.
I think they know the expectations are hurtful. There's some people that don't get it. They just pop off and they don't think about it. So I feel you, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Teresa, first of all, we're going to run out of time, but I want to say, Teresa, you inspire me.
Very inspirational.
I hope that you will stay in touch with me because you inspire me. And I, as Teresa, as Kassira knows, I had a rough day dealing with an issue, and you put me in the right frame of mind. I'm ending this day in the right frame of mind with where I need to be. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to say a few things, and then Kassira, you can decide who's going to have the final word. It's not going to be me. But I am reading, I found this wonderful affirmation today, and I want to leave with my thought. Before I leave my affirmation, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Let's do a giveaway.
Okay, there's nobody. I think there's only 2 people that have done the hashtag. Like, we need to remind people to do the hashtag.
One person. So we're not going to do a giveaway tonight. We need more people to sign up for that. So come back next week, and we will do a giveaway. So
because we don't have
need
time.
more people to sign up for that to do so. But this is the affirmation that I found today. Today, I comfort my threatened heart. I affirm my safety in times of change. I accept the comfort of spiritual sunlight. I am warmed by the truth that I am loved and protected even in the midst of chaotic change. Despite my shock, I survey my new spiritual surroundings with a sense of possibility. And I love that. And that's from Julia Cameron, The Artist Way. But I want to thank everybody for being here. As I end all of my shows, I ask everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the 8th name that pops up and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know what they mean to you. As my dear friend David Friedman always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. So I'm going to leave the screen. Kassira and Teresa, I'm going to leave the screen to the 2 of you. And like I said, Kassira, you will decide who will have the final word. And I love you both. And Teresa, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to read the Louise Hay quote from the book, and then I'd like for you to do final words of encouragement, if you wouldn't mind, Teresa. Is that okay? Okay. At the top, in my book, at the top of page 153, some of you have it, who are watching, on the chapter of why we hold on to illness, injury, and disease. This is a direct quote. I encourage everyone to have this book on their shelf and pull it for the rest of your lives. It's Louise Hay's Heal Your Body A to Z. It's a great little handbook about a particular illness or a chronic thing that you got, or anything from mild to serious, and what she thinks triggered the manifestation. Okay, here's the Louise Hay quote. And as you know, she did finally, her body succumbed to cancer eventually, and she left this plane. But here's what she said. Let me take my glasses off. I want to share with you one of the reasons I know that disease can be reversed by simply changing mental patterns. These days, no matter how dire a person's predicament seems to be, I know that if he or she is willing to do the mental work of releasing and forgiving, which I teach in this book, by the way, almost anything can be healed. The point of power is right here and right now in our minds. Both the good in our lives and the disease are the results of mental thought patterns that form our experiences. In order to permanently eliminate a condition, we must first work to dissolve the mental cause. Teresa, I love you, and I'm so glad we still know each other after all these years. And I so appreciate your time today. And please, you have the last word, and I can't wait to hear what it is.
Well, life is unpredictable. We need to not put things off till tomorrow. Stop saying, when this happens, I'll do this. Because as we've spoken about today, people leave us unexpectedly. And so, what is it that you want to be? What is it that you want for your life? Not looking too far back, not looking to the future and saying, but stay in the present moment, right here, right now. What is going on right here, right now? What are you feeling at this moment? And honor that. If you're feeling anxious about this conversation, honor that. If you're feeling hopeful about this conversation, honor that. We are so much more than we allow ourselves to embrace. It's so funny in these conversations that I have with Kassira. I look back over photographs from those days we worked together, and I remember how I never thought I was pretty enough. I never thought that I was talented enough. I was always looking at myself in the mirror saying, if only I could get this surgery or that surgery. And today, I look back on those pictures and say, my God, I was a pretty woman. I was a presence. People thought I was talented. And I didn't hear those messages because the voice in my head was telling me everything that's wrong with this picture. And I think the last thing I'm going to say is many times with my patients, I'll take a blank piece of paper and I'll squiggle a circle in the corner. And I'll hold up the blank piece of paper and I'll say, what do you see? And people will say, well, I see a circle, or I see, it looks like a tumbleweed, or it's ovals. And I'll go, okay, what else do you see? And they'll tell me something else that's wrong with the picture. And I say, but you also see a perfectly good blank piece of paper that happens to have a flaw in the corner. I can still write on this paper. I can still do something with this paper. It's just got a flaw. We are built to scan the environment and see everything that's wrong with this picture in order to protect ourselves. But we're also not paying attention to everything that's right with this picture. So as you go forward and you think about what you want for your life, look at what's right with this picture. Look at all you have, all you possess, all you do well, and it will help you put into perspective exactly what you need to do in order to manifest that thing in your life that you want, whether it's to be happy in a relationship, or whether it's to do more with your career, or make some sort of move from one city to another, change something drastically that you've only been looking at the downside of. So I wish everybody well. Life is a journey, and we're lucky to be able to have this sort of insight to make every day better than the last.